Namaskaram. There is a slight change in plan. I will do 2-3 episodes on Christian and church arranged marriages as originally planned after this episode. I will dedicate this episode to address some of the concerns. I am getting quite a few calls and messages from a lot of friends and well-wishers who seem to be disturbed by the so-called rebuttal videos. These videos are made by the so-called warriors of Jesus who sprang into action after watching just the first episode. Many elders who treat me as their own daughter, those who treat me as their sister, and many of my good friends are going into a protection mode and asking me as to why I'm putting myself out to be targeted by these crass people. Someone called me the other day and said, "You got out of Christianity and are happily married with a beautiful family. Why should you even bother about all these things happening in churches and Christian communities? Why are you putting yourself to be attacked by these Christian zealots?" Yes, I do appreciate your concern. What I'm doing is counterintuitive to many. However, this is my call to Dharma and I do what I do in response to that call. Let me address these concerns and use this opportunity to make my Hindu friends understand the ecosystem and the landscape of Christianity. What you see happening in front of your eyes is all there is to Christian ecosystem. Seeing these people in action will give you an insight into the modus operandi of the church. You can see the depravity of the warriors of Christ from the way they are hurling abuses, thinking that it is a holy act. All I'm doing is sharing my experience with Christianity and the workings and the operations of the church. This kind of witch hunting and hounding of individuals who refuse to toe the line of the church is nothing new to me. In some sense, I'm elated to see the zealots coming out to do the smear campaigns, as this will help many Hindu friends to see the ugly side of the Jesus Loves You Brigade. Over the years, many Hindus got converted to Christianity. Thousands of so-called testimonies of these converts, which are carefully tailored, are put out on all kinds of platforms. Did you see one video made by any Hindu targeting the convert? Did you see any video made by Hindus who went and harassed the family members of the new convert, pressing them to give information as to why their son or daughter or brother got converted to Christianity? This, my friends, is what I have been talking about for years. The intimidations and bullying are here for you all to see. One of the main reasons for doing this series is to shine more light on the atrocities happening in the churches and in Christian communities. Today, I'm in a very unique position because of my first-hand Christian experience. In addition to educating my Hindu friends about Christianity and church system, I'm also being the voice for millions of Christians who are trapped by Christianity and have no way to come out and fight these vicious attacks on them and their families. This mudslinging is what I grew up watching inside the four walls of churches all through my growing years. And the only difference is that it has now come out to the streets by these Christian warriors on social media. Intimidations of hell and eternal damnation are the only tools that Christians have to silence the victims, whose lives have become living hells because of Christianity. These so-called Christian warriors are clueless on how to deal with someone like me, who cannot be intimidated or threatened with hellfire. When a person like me walks away from these hellholes and torture houses called churches and talks about their acts of intimidations, these so-called Christian warriors have no other tool left in their toolbox to attack me. All they can do is to sit around like this and gossip. It is for a reason that these Christian warriors hate an apostate, someone who walks away from Christianity, more than the unbeliever or the heathen who doesn't believe in the message of Christ. That is because a person like me was once an insider and knows all the tricks of the trade. These people are even more enraged as they cannot intimidate me into silence. Christian pastors who loot gullible people in broad daylight by extracting tithes and offerings are now using these social media Christian warriors to deflect the attention away from their violent and nefarious actions. Christian societies have no mechanism for self-correction. Neither can the legal systems take them to task for all the antisocial activities that they carry out in the name of Jesus and Christianity. The atrocities happening in churches do not come to light as victims are afraid to come out and speak openly about these things, as they have no courage to face the kind of witch hunting that you see happening right in front of your eyes. Victims seldom talk as they're brainwashed to believe that if they expose all these things, they will be punished by God as they're bringing shame to God's name. This brainwashing also happens using Bible verses. I have sat through church sermons which use this text to silence those who wanted to seek justice by approaching those outside the church for help. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, 1 through 8. I'm not going to read all of this, but you can check it yourself. The gist of this Bible verse is a Christian directive to keep the muck in the churches under the wraps. Not one of these so-called Bible scholars had the guts to comment on the contents of my talk. Also note that not one of them had the spine to explain as to why Jesus asked his followers to hate their families. To deflect attention away from the doctrinal fallacies, all that these Bible scholars did was to sit around and gossip in great length about my personal life. All these people's energy is spent to establish a personal motive for what I'm doing. What these desperate people are failing to see but are too afraid to acknowledge is that the fallout from Christianity happens when people see the hollowness and the dark side of this religion. They want to believe that people reject this religion because of silly reasons such as not liking the color of the walls of a church. I took some time to watch a couple of those so-called rebuttals, which are nothing but witch hunting. In a group discussion on Rakshana TV channel, an elderly Christian lady passed a judgment that I am an ungrateful person. Based on what did she call me an ungrateful person? She assumed that I ate the church's money and am now biting the hand that fed me. Let's look at how she came to this conclusion. Somewhere she has seen that I am a pastor's daughter. She used this information and assumed that my father raised and educated us with the money given by the church members as tithes and offerings, as it is the norm in the Christian ecosystem. So the good lady has confirmed that church is a money-making business for pastors and owners of these churches. This good lady did a little bit more. If this good lady did a little bit more research about my family, she would have found out that my dad is not the stereotypical pastor for whom church is a money-making business. By Ishvara's grace, my father was not that kind of a pastor who raised us with money extracted from the poor churchgoers. He earned his living through a secular job that he got using the education that my Hindu grandparents gave him. No Christian organization spent a dime on my dad to make him a respected engineer that he was. He retired as a superintendent engineer from AP government and did all of his church activities while still working a job. So the dear auntie has to eat her own words for speaking too soon. As a matter of fact, my father was one of the many victims of church and Christianity. It is unfortunate that he doesn't see it that way as yet. He is someone who for past 45 plus years has been paying through his nose to support his higher ups in the church. In his role as an evangelist, my father is responsible for collecting the tithes from many poor people to send it to the owners of the church business, who sit on their bottoms and eat this money that is extracted from the poor. Tragically, That makes him the perpetrator of many crimes that are all part of this money collection, even though neither he nor his family touched a single pie of that money. My fallout from Christianity did not happen because of my marriage to a Hindu. I am married for 22 years now, and my exit out of Christianity started a few years ago after seeing the loathful things that an otherwise good person like my dad has been doing for the past 6 years in the role of an evangelist. I will devote an entire episode to throw light on how money given by poor, gullible Indian Christians is leaving the shores of India to support these so-called Indian Christian missionaries. These missionaries are those who for 2-3 generations have been living in US without having to work a job, as the money that many evangelists like my dad meticulously collect reaches them through Hawala. I will also do another episode to go into more details on what circumstances led me to come out in public like this to talk about these things, as all of what happened behind the scenes for my dad to get the post of an evangelist opens up the sewers in Christian communities. You will understand what kind of crimes happen in Christian communities. These crimes range from intimidating gullible believers to pimping out young girls to corrupt government officials who facilitate the crimes that these Christians carry out. By the time I am done, I will have many Hindus who will get thoroughly educated and will understand why I call Christianity a vicious and a poisonous trap. Also, the dear lady who sat at the discussion table of Rakshana TV might want to make note that I am not going to fall into her trap of supporting some ignorant people who lose their words and call Christians as rice-bag converts. I have enough love and regard left in me for my family members and friends who are still Christians. In good conscience, I will never give them this cheap tag and call them as rice-bag converts. No, the kind of Christianity that I grew up with did not have rice-bag converts. What I really saw was rice-bag stealers. Church leaders who used Bible verses as bullets and at gunpoint extracted money from the many poor people to live luxurious lives. It takes the offerings and tithes given by thousands of poor people to support the 5-star Christian pastors who own private jets and roll in luxurious cars dressed in impeccable suits and silk saris. Another guy in that channel, some Naveen, gave some interesting details as to why the name rice-bag converts was given to Christians. He said that he comes from some king's family. Based on his narration about how the workers were paid their wages in dung, which they washed off to get the undigested corn in the dung of the cattle to eat, it does seem like he has seen all of these happen in his family. It is sad that he was raised in such a hateful environment and saw these kinds of atrocities done to poor people who perhaps came to work for them. While what his forefathers have done to poor people is quite deplorable, it is important to not fall into the trap and make Hinduism the villain for the lack of character of the people in his family if what he narrated is really true. It is the lack of samskaram that teachings of Sanatana Dharma teaches that made this Naveen's family members give dung as pay to workers, assuming that his story was true. That lack of samskaras of Naveen's forefathers has nothing to do with Hinduism and its value system. In any case, I appreciate Naveen's honesty to talk about such dark past of his family. Yes, those families which lack the samskaras that Sanatana Dharma teaches are the ones who will lose their children to Christianity forever. These children will surely become victims of this Christian predation to become puppets and pawns in the hands of church leaders. Now, looking at the big picture, all of these Praveen Pagadalas of Christian world who at the drop of a hat come to the streets to attack those who are trying to expose the evils of Christianity I know one thing: these are small fish and play no significant role in the Christian circles. These are mere foot soldiers and puppets who don't even have a clue about the forces which control them. While their Christian masters are breaking bread with corrupt politicians and underworld dons, these foot soldiers dupe themselves into thinking that they are the ones who are shouldering the responsibility of protecting Christianity from outsiders' attack. If you have noticed, no established church pastor comes out to do these so-called rebuttal videos as there are enough foot soldiers to wage these street fights. For the kingpins who move the pawns, these foot soldiers are use and throw napkins. If a couple of them get hurt or even lose their lives in these street brawls, it is still a winner for the church, as they can now further their agenda. They can now stand on the top of the roofs and cry wolf that they are being hounded and attacked and play the minority victim card. Also, you see that a very young crop of so-called Christian warriors are the ones who seem to be agitated by the videos that people like us make. Why are only these people reacting to these videos while the big names in Christian fields are completely silent? This is $1 million question. And the answer to this question will help you understand the landscape and business models of the churches in India today. Answer to this question will also help you understand as to why only these so-called social media Christian warriors are vehemently reacting to my videos. This answer will also give you a bird's eye view of the Christian landscape in India. All of what I am now going to talk about makes sense if you understand the business model of Christianity and the pecking order of different types of churches in India. For now, let us leave the Roman Catholic churches alone, but focus on the Protestant churches, because the warriors of Christ who are making these rebuttal videos are all entirely Protestants. Take for example a guy called Vijay Kumar or Praveen Pagadala or a Samba Sivarao, who have launched themselves into this attack mode to defend Christianity. These are newbies in the market who are trying to build their business of a Christian church. A church needs members who can pay tithes and offerings in return for the so-called salvation that people get, which gives them the confirmation that they have a place in heaven. To get members, they all have only one product called Jesus to sell. So the market is quite competitive, and the fight is quite fierce among Christians to recruit people to become members of a particular church. To understand what I mean by competition, let us briefly look at the last 200 to 300 years of Christianity and church history in India. If you look at the landscape of Christianity, we'll just look at it in parts. For until 1950s, before India got independence, you see that there are what are called as denominational churches. These were the churches that were started by Britishers, and these Britishers came in as they tagged along with East India Company, and they were called this. Actually, these people take offense that now I'm calling every Christian a missionary, and they actually want only to call the Britishers as missionaries. Let me give it to them. So these are the missionaries that they want to believe are the real missionaries who came behind the East India Company to establish churches. So until 1950, before the independence or right after the independence, the kind of churches that we had in India were denominational churches. I'll give you some names. In South India, if you see, these churches are called Church of South India, Baptist Church, Methodist Church, Lutheran Church. So who are the members of this church? If you see, the members of these churches are purely Hindus, because those were the first generation Hindus that got converted into Christianity. So till about 1950, these churches took care of all the converts that they had. And what you'll understand by these denominational churches is there is a difference between the kind of churches that we see today and the denominational church. These churches had a central organization, and from the central organization they had all the operations happening from that place. And another important thing about these churches was that they had they took some their new converts, selected few of them, took them to theological colleges, Bible colleges as they were called, and trained them for some time, and then sent them to take care of the churches that they themselves built. These Britishers built these churches at that time, and these people were the pastors of the church, and in fact all of these people were actually paid a salary for this. Even to this day, if you see in these denominations, the church pastors have a fixed pay depending on how many years of experience they have and all that kind of thing. So till 1950s, these were the kind of churches that we had. But then when India got independence, and when majority of these white men left to go back to England, they handed over these denominational churches to the Indians that they trained. So by then, if you even to this day, you can actually go back and see. So whoever were the new converts that got converted into Christianity started living in what are called as church compounds. They were happily settled in those. So what is a church compound? A church compound is a place where they built a church. Next to it, they built a small hospital and a school, and around it were lot of houses. So all of these church members and pastors and whoever worked in those churches or whoever became church members got to live inside this church compound. They got houses free, they didn't have to pay any rent. So to this day, if you go to church compound, some families are still living there who inherited those houses from their forefathers. So what happened because of this kind of arrangement is the Christians at that time became complacent. They really didn't have a big reason to spread Christianity. They were comfortable. They had houses, and also another big thing that happened in those days and that during that time was, even though there were schools and all those things, especially the men that were in these Christian families were not very educated. They kind of lacked the discipline to further themselves in education. So it kind of the Christianity being spread was kind of slowed down because it really didn't have a zealous ambassadors to carry forward. So looking at this vacuum, another second generation kinds of churches came. So what these churches they're called evangelical churches. So the church that my father got converted into, which is called Layman's Evangelical Fellowship, is one such church. And there was another church called Hebron. This was founded by Bhakt Singh and his group. And of course you have Jesus Calls, that is a church that was founded by Dinakaran, and after that now his son is taking care of this church. So if you look at who are the members of this church, the members of this church these churches are those that were pulled out from these traditional denominational churches and new Hindus that got converted into it. Now the way they grabbed the people from these denominational churches is they said that these denominational churches have become dead. They have become cold in the Lord. So there was a concept of revival meetings. So these evangelical churches or people who wanted to start these evangelical churches used to conduct what are called as revival meetings, and during those revival meetings they grabbed the people from these other denominational churches and started forming their own churches. So the unique proposition of this church was they didn't have to come and study in theological colleges, anything. They said, come to us, we will train you in Bible verses a little bit, and you can go as a layman to become an evangelist. So And then they had a group of people that they gathered around, and these laymen were their ambassadors who went and built churches. However, these evangelical churches were what we call as family business churches. So if you look at the church that my father is part of, there is something called, there's a family called Daniel family. This family is the owner, promoter, everything. He's all in all. So that one family controls everything, all the evangelists, all the properties, they own everything. So if you look at Hebron Church, the Bhakt Singh and his group, and you know Jesus Cause, like Dinakaran was the founder of this church, now Paul Dinakaran, and then his children are also now getting ready to inherit the property. So those are the kinds of churches. So these churches kind of were in full swing from 1950s to almost late 1980s or 1990s. So this church business became, this model of church business became a very attractive proposition, because all you needed to do was just start a church and then gather members and then train them to give you 10%. So it's like you don't have to do any kind of investment. This is a business that you can start without any investment and without any infrastructure. So seeing that this is a good proposition, that these evangelical churches kind of expanded again in, say, 1990s. So if you look at, especially in Telugu state, I'm more familiar with the churches in the Telugu states. So there is a group called Calvary Evangelical Fellowship. This is founded by a guy called Jay Paul. Now, who is this Jay Paul? This Jay Paul was actually part of Layman's Evangelical Fellowship, and he thought, okay, why should I give them the money? So he decided that this is a good opportunity. He can start his own church business. So he walked out of there and started his own church. And many Telugu people know the Satish Kumar of the 5-star. He's the heartthrob of Christians in Telugu states today. He's none other than the nephew of this Jay Paul. So he started his own church. Then by the time this 1990s and 2000s, especially in Andhra state, Y.S. Rajshekar Reddy became the chief minister. So these people had the auspices of the political forces, and he was a Christian sympathizer, or he himself was a Christian. So his son-in-law, brother Anil Kumar, if you see, now he became a big star in those times, during that times, and he started a church called Anil World Evangelism. So these groups kind of, the unique thing that this group of churches did were, they actually got connected to the wider Christian world. That is the reason recently this Satish Kumar has come to US, and he had an interview with Mike Pence, the vice president of US, and apparently he said that there is no freedom in India for them to spread the gospel. So these are very well connected Christians. So till about 2000s or 2005, these churches kind of actively recruited people. They got the people from evangelical churches, they got the people from the traditional denominational churches, and of course they also converted a lot of Hindus. So that's how these churches came in. Now, in the last 10-15 years, you have a completely modernized churches. These are your international franchise model churches. So these are mostly like if we have this McDonald's and things like that, right? They open franchises. They find that, oh, there's a good market for it. Let's go and open a shop there. So this is exactly the kind of model this is. And the people who kind of experimented with this international franchise model are the Assemblies of God. Those are the churches. You see all of them now. You see one in Chennai, you see one in Coimbatore, and you see in Hyderabad. And who are the target people for these churches? The target people are the young IT professionals from all religions, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, because now these are all modern churches. If you see, a lot of young people started going to these churches because they kind of got bored with these old-fashioned churches. If you see my brothers, if they don't like to go to my dad's church when they come there, when they come to India, or they don't like to go to CSI church because this is way too old-fashioned. So a lot of young professionals now started going to this American-based churches. So if you walk into this church, you won't even know whether you're in the US or in India. So that's the kind of environment you have. And also another interesting kind of churches started. People who are in my generations who came to work in the US, some of them came to do their masters, some of them came to do their jobs on H1Bs. They worked for some time, so after they worked in India, in the US for 10 years as IT professionals and things like that. And then they kind of got bored with these corporate jobs, the work stress of corporate jobs and keeping up with schedules, and especially in the IT jobs you also had to do like night calls because they had to manage offshore projects. So they kind of got they wanted to try something new. And what was the new thing that they could do, because these people have seen churches being built in India when they were small, so they kind of toyed around with building their own churches. So they resigned these corporate jobs and they started these Indian Christian churches. If you go to Chicago, you will see a lot of churches. One of my brother is stuck in a church like that, and this is a good one because they just got the pastor. The pastor who was an IT professional, he kind of quit his job. He has 4 children, but he still had the faith to quit his job and start a church, because now he can count on all the members who give 10%. So he can just sit, have a relaxed life, so do some preaching here and there and just collect the money, or there's really no corporate pressure. There are no projects to finish. You just have to preach. That's all. Do God's work with all your heart, and all your needs will be fulfilled. So you have churches like this. So what these people said, once they established themselves with a good donor base in the US, they took a little bit of money and they now send it to India. And now in India they start their branches, like a satellite church, or churches that US Indian Christians own and run in India. So you have these kinds of churches. So if you understand this big picture, you see that the landscape of Christianity is quite competitive. There are, like, from those denominational churches, they've kind of branched out in all different kinds of churches. So now, because of these many churches springing up in India, it's kind of become very hard to recruit people into churches. So now that you have seen the competition in this field, you know that to build a membership base, these newbie pastors who are doing these rebuttal videos have to do one of the two things. Either they have to poach and stealthily steal members from other churches, or they have to recruit Hindus and other non-Christians. Now, stealing members from other churches is a tall order, as many churches have their sheep locked in. Many of these church members have many strings attached to them due to marriages and things like that. So it's kind of hard to poach them. It was easy 40-50 years ago to steal people from churches like CSI, Lutheran, Methodist, Baptist, and other such first generation churches in India. These newbies who are doing these rebuttals are a bit late in the market of building church empires. Perhaps these people wanted to recruit the poor Hindus to build their own church businesses, as stealing members away from other churches is kind of hard at this point. These poor guys may now be finding it hard to recruit gullible Hindus, as many Hindu organizations are working quite hard on the ground to bring awareness, to educate even villagers that these Christian pastors are behind them for their money. Even 10 years ago, it would have been easy, as there was not that much resistance from Hindus to this Jesus loves you brigade. At a time like this, when it's already very hard, a person like me who grew up in Christian circles and whose own dad is a church pastor, coming out to expose all this muck makes it even harder for these newbies to expand this church business. This frustration is perhaps what is making them to come out and attack me. In their desperations, they want to believe that I am doing all these things egged on by my Hindu family, friends, BJP, RSS and whatnot. And too bad for them that they're not able to nail it, because none of my family members will come out and give a first-hand account of to confirm that what I'm doing is because I hate Christianity or because I married a Hindu. Now my folks know that it is a slippery slope and they don't want to open another big can of worms. My dad especially cannot come and speak on these social media platforms as he needs the church leaders' permission for everything. That is the kind of servitude that the church owners demand from their servants in church business. So all that these Christ warriors can do is sit and speculate and make up their own stories, and in the process make complete fools of themselves, as many in Christian circles in Telugu states know that what I'm bringing out to light is something that they were all aware of for a long time. They know that what they carefully kept under the wraps cannot be hidden anymore from Hindus who they target to convert into Christianity. In conclusion, let me give an advice to these Christian warriors. Their energy is better spent if they focused on cleaning up the sewers in their church businesses. My Hindu friends and family, my pranams to you for standing by me, and I count on your prayers and blessings to do this. I will resume the series and I will talk about marriages as tools of manipulation and exploitation for the next 2-3 episodes. I promise you, please don't worry about this. This is a game I know how to play. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching. Namaskaram.